There we go.
Yay!
Okay.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I literally just tried to go live for the first time the other day, and I was like, oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
how that works.
I've been live a few times, but I'm still getting used to it. I'm not a pro at it. So,
Yeah.
but how are you today?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So, thank you for having this conversation with me.
Of
Um,
course.
so I'm gonna for the recording, and I'll send you the live replay. I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into it so we can be respectful of each other's time. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I am Tiffany Williams, life and relationship coach. Today I have a very special guest, Coach Brianna Moore. She's a a certified Christian life coach, as well as a survivor of narcissistic abuse. And today we're going to keep it real. We're going to talk about failed relationships, the mistakes we've made, the wounds that we didn't even know we had, manipulation, narcissistic abuse, spiritual bypassing, even when it comes to the Christian good girl performance.
Mhm.
So we're just gonna hop on into it. So tell me about your relationship, being in that narcissistic relationship. How did that begin?
Oh goodness. So I'm gonna try to keep things short because this is kind of a long story. But basically, I was in like my mid to late 20s. I had just moved away from my hometown. I moved out of state. Um, and so I was kind of like trying to, in a sense, rebuild my life. Like I was just trying to start fresh. And so I was working as an admin assistant at this local church. It was kind of a bigger church. And how I came about that, I don't even know. I felt like that was all God because I wasn't really looking for that opportunity. But anyway, so I just ended up working at a church that I really loved. And there was someone working there on staff. They weren't in the office per se, but they were kind of like around doing facility type things in the building. And so during this time, like I said, I was in my 20s. Okay. I wasn't really established. I was trying to establish myself. I was trying to find myself. I wasn't really looking to seriously date at the time. Like I was kind of like, I had a few I don't want to say situationships, but I had dated a couple people and I didn't get the results that I wanted. Okay. I wasn't as mature. I wasn't as like stable in my foundation. So I just told myself, I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to try to establish myself and let that be that. Like, so, when this person approached me, they told me immediately that they had been watching me. That was the first thing. And I didn't know I was being watched. Um, so I said, okay, that's odd. Initially I thought, well, they're just a really nice person. I wasn't interested in dating them, but they pursued me and you know how church people can be. They're like, oh, he's a nice boy. He's a nice guy. You should give him a chance. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, whatever. Like, I just wasn't really feeling it. And he just was very persistent. And he asked me out, and I was like, okay. And I told him up front, like, I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm not even really trying to date. I just kind of want to make friends. I'm new in the area, that kind of thing. So he was just like, I don't really believe that. I think there could be something here. Like, I know what I want. You should just give me a chance, that kind of thing. Um, so long story short, like I didn't like him initially, but I just kind of went with the flow. And very early in the relationship, he was just very like kind of pushy. I would try to express to him, where I was, and he just kind of was very dismissive. Um, so that kind of threw me off a little, but I was like, oh, well, he just knows what he wants. I just brushed off a lot of things. And of course, there was influence around me that kind of encouraged that and would just tell me, just give him a chance. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense how it, how we
Yeah.
started the relationship, but yeah.
So, did you eventually just let your guard down because of the outside influence in your ear, or is it something else that kind of made you let your guard down and attracted you to him at some point?
Yeah, so like I said, he had this persona that was just like really nice, right? He was very accommodating. He kind of presented as someone who was a friend, who was kind of there for me. I was dealing with a lot during that time. I felt kind of emotionally vulnerable,
Hmm.
and I was dealing with things like depression, and I was just trying to like get myself together. And so he kind of it was like an emotional bond, it almost became like a codependency. Like he wanted to try to solve all my problems and kind of listen, and it was a lot of trauma bonding, and he told me all the stuff that he had gone through. So it was more of like an emotional thing, and I did let my guard down because even though I wasn't really dating at the time, I did want to eventually get married. And so I feel like he kind of used that to pull me in. Like he was like, "Yeah, I want this kind of marriage. I want a family, and this is my vision for that." So even though I wasn't really prepared for that at the time, I was like, okay, well, since he kind of wants the same thing, I will give it a chance, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, you all were actually engaged at one point, correct?
Yeah, it moved very quickly, like, and it was totally not the pace that I wanted, but I just kind of acquiesced. So we had only been dating for about 4 months, and he just very quickly wanted to consume all my time. He's just like always wanted to be on the phone, always wanted to go out to eat, and um it's like I didn't really, slowly I started to kind of let go of my interest because he just wanted to be in my space constantly. Like so I saw a lot of red flags early, but after about 4 months he actually asked me to marry him. And I was really caught off guard because, first off, I told him I wasn't trying to rush into anything from the beginning. And then the relationship, to me, like, we didn't have like a very solid foundation for him to be asking for marriage at that time. So it kind of threw me off. And in hindsight, I'm thinking, okay, he probably sensed that I had apprehension or that I was kind of pulling away. And I feel
Mhm.
like he used that kind of like promise of marriage to pull me back in. So even though I was a little confused, again, I just went along with it. I was like, oh, well, maybe, this is building into what can turn into a good marriage. And so it was just a lot of like, I don't want to say spiritual bypassing, but my own boundaries I kind of pushed aside. And I think it was that need for validation. I think that was at the root of it because, again, like he was very persistent and he knew what he wanted. So I just felt like, oh, I'm being chosen. That's how it feels to finally be chosen. So, this might be a good opportunity for me. So let me just ride it out and see what happens.
So, it was a lot of love bombing behavior in the beginning.
A lot, yes.
So he was basically, you were away from family, so you had just moved from away
Out
from
of
family
state.
to another state,
Yeah.
and so he was feeling that need. He was standing in that gap per se.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Um, what are some big red flags that you would say that you dismissed early on? You say you mentioned some of the red flags that you saw. Can you name some of the red flags that you saw? Um, the persistence and anything else, and which ones that you just kind of dismiss?
Definitely. So there were actually some major red flags. So the first one was just the fact that he was very dismissive of my wants, my desires. And he kind of made it seem like, no, I'm just trying to be the leader. Like, I'm just trying to be the head. Like, he used a lot of spiritual terminology. No, I'm just trying to lead us properly. And I know what it's supposed to look like. He had been married before, he was divorced. And so that was the first red flag. Like, he just missed a lot of my desires and a lot of the things I expressed. As we got deeper into the relationship, there were things I saw, such as anger. He had some serious anger issues, and he kept it hidden pretty good in the beginning, but it got to a point where he would just have these episodes and just explode over the smallest things. And it just made me feel so unbalanced. And because we had bonded so quickly emotionally, and I felt like I knew him, I would make excuses for him and say, oh, he's just dealing with this, you know, he just needs me to be an ear, you know. I would just make excuses for him. And that was the first thing. Like, if somebody is just always angry or always blowing up, like they can't control their emotions, that's a huge red flag. And then thirdly, I would say, this is like my top three, but there were a lot. His history. You know, he told me pretty early on he was ex-military. He had a dishonorable discharge on his record, and it was essentially due to domestic violence. And most people would probably hear that and say, well, how was that unclear to you? Like, that should have been just immediate exit, right? But no, like, he built this story up in such a way where he made it seem like he was the victim. Like, his wife was antagonizing him. She was cheating on him, according to him. I don't really believe any of this anymore. She was, you know, cheating on him with his comrades and just doing stuff to him. And he just snapped is the word that he used. And so because he was so nice, I was like, well, you know, that can happen. You know, sometimes guys deal with stuff from women. So he just slowly built up. Like, he didn't drop any of this on me, like, all at once. Right. You know, he created this story, he created this persona, and I just bought into it. Yeah, go ahead.
So slowly, that's how women usually end up in narcissistic relationships, where it's just kind of like piece by piece, and it just keep building up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's very insidious. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it, but he was very good at, like, human psychology. He knew if he came out and said certain things in the beginning that I would be like, whoa. So he took his time building that rapport with me and gaining my trust and love bombing and just being supportive. And then he would slowly kind of expose, like, his history and his past. So I was already emotionally bonded with him by that point. And he was just pathological. Like, he just lied so much. And I didn't know it at the time, but, you know, he just said whatever felt like he just said whatever he felt like he needed to say to gain my trust.
So women often talk about intuition, the woman's intuition. Do you feel like at any point your intuition was trying to warn you about something?
Definitely. Like I said in the beginning, I just felt very unbalanced because we weren't on the same page per se. And, you know, we just didn't have the same pacing as far as the relationship. So that kind of bothered me. And then there started to be incidents to where, like I said, he had a temper. And so we started getting into arguments. And I remember the first time we kind of got into it to the point where it kind of concerned me. He got in my face, he got really loud, and I just saw a side of him that was the complete opposite of what he had been showing me. So from that point, it was disturbing to me. And even though I kind of let it slide that first time, it never left the back of my mind. I just replayed it over and over. And that's at the point where I should have walked away. Like, I should have cut him off. But I just felt so, like, I don't know. It felt like kind of hard to pull away from him because we worked in the same place. We went to the same church. We were around a lot of the same people. And I just felt like it's kind of hard to pull away without kind of it being dramatic, if that makes sense. I know it sounds like, well, why are you so concerned about other people? But um it's like he wouldn't take no for an answer almost. Like I would bring these concerns to him, like, you need to get therapy. I'm concerned about this. Like, this is not normal. And he would just like brush it under the rug or do something really nice to kind of pacify me. And so I just felt like even if I tried to get people involved or tell them what was going on, they wouldn't believe me because he
Right.
had a persona that was just
Reputation.
so nice. And mind you, he grew up in this church and in this community, so people knew him, but they didn't really know me.
Right.
And so he could tell people anything, and I felt like they believed him, but they didn't believe me. So
Yeah.
I just kind of started to feel a little trapped. And I was just seeing, it was just such a difference between what he was saying and what I was seeing. I just felt overwhelmed mentally, like it just wasn't lining up.
Okay. So, a lot of women, I believe, struggle with what I call the good girl performance, especially Christian women. And you mentioned that you felt the need to kind of overlook and kind of invest or care a little bit too much about his emotional dysregulation. Um,
Oh, I
Can you tell
can.
me a little bit more about what that looks like as far as do you believe as far as the Christian good girl or just being a good girl, what does that look typically look like?
Yeah, actually, so that was another point where people, I felt like I was influenced a lot as well because people in the church, they mean well, but sometimes they could say things like, well, he just needs a good woman in his life and you're helping him get better and, just be patient with him and that type of thing, as if that was my responsibility to help him work on those issues. Like that's something he should have been addressing on his own and not, it should have been my burden. So I was young and a little naive. So even though it pegged me a certain way, I was very open to the opinions and suggestions of the people around me because in my mind it's like, well, they're elders, they mean well. A lot of these people are married and have families, so maybe they know something I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So at what age, because it's very common, at what age do you believe that this belief begins um, with the spiritual bypassing? Because oftentimes, as you mentioned, we'll like, oh, we just need to pray, we need to forgive him, or have a little bit more patience, or he need a good woman in his life. Where do you believe that this messaging comes from, and why?
Mm. I think it comes from a lot of different things. Maybe a combination of like biblical principles of forgiving people or just um, discipling people, or maybe people are have a little knowledge of the word, but they're kind of twisting or misunderstanding it. So certain things are kind of like passed down from generation, church culture. Also, maybe, maybe people are dealing with certain things in their own life, and so the advice that they're giving is not really that helpful, or they're just going based on their own experience or stuff they have seen. Um, it could be cultural, like societal, where women are just expected to be accommodating and to take on a lot of emotional burdens in relationships. So I think it's a combination of things. And when you're young, I'm not saying every young woman is like this, but sometimes you're a little over eager to please and to be in a relationship and focus on marriage and that type of thing. And if you're not taught how to go about it at a young age, then you probably will accept a lot of stuff that you probably shouldn't just due to ignorance.
You mentioned that you did desire marriage, but you were casually kind of like, well, I wouldn't even say you wouldn't say casually dating. It kind of like just was going with the flow. Did you have a timeline of when you wanted to be married?
No, so I think prior to me meeting him, I had, like I said, I had dated a couple people and I didn't get the result I wanted. It was one guy in particular that I really liked, and I was a little heartbroken. So even though I wanted marriage, I told myself I'm just going to take a break from dating because I don't think I'm ready right now. Like, I'm just not in a good space. I'm not getting the results I want. So it's not that my desire changed. I just felt like my approach needed to change, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, um, how long were you two together?
So total, I would say about 3.5 to 4 years.
Okay.
And yeah, it was very tumultuous. So it was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of leaving, getting back together. I would leave. He would convince me to come back. I would be staying with family. I would be kind of almost getting better emotionally because it was very traumatic emotionally. But so I would come back home with family and start to kind of move on a little bit. And then he would say or do something to kind of pull me back in, and then I would go back. So total, I would say it was about 4 years.
So, what was your final breaking point?
So honestly, there's a term in narcissist of the cycle of narcissistic abuse. It talks about I forget the exact word, but it's basically the person will just disappear out of nowhere and then come back. Like it was just a cycle of them disappearing and coming back. So essentially, it was one time we had gotten to a bad argument, and at this time we were living in different states because I had came back home. So we were just talking on the phone, and he would, explode and when anger, and he would just say, well, I'm out or I'm leaving, and he would just kind of go and do, go somewhere and do whatever he was doing. So this was one of those times where he left, and this time he didn't try to come back. Like he didn't try to pull me back in. He didn't call me for a long time. So I had time to kind of sit and think about things. And prior to that point, it was kind of like I almost wanted him to come back because I was just so enmeshed in that, and I was just so used to the trauma and the cycle. But that particular time, I was like, you know what? I don't want him to come back. Like, I'm good. I'm ready to kind of break free because I'm tired. I just got to a point where I was tired. I didn't really care about losing the relationship. I didn't care about being lonely. I didn't care about the fact that I had to kind of rebuild my life because I lost pretty much everything in that situation, which that's a completely different story. So I just got to the point where I was tired. And I believe, honestly, it was the grace of God that allowed me to break completely from that because my mom was praying for me during that time. And she was just like, I'm praying that you find yourself again, that you remember who you are. So during that time is when the time where he disappeared, and he just never tried to come back.
Okay.
So I think it was God's grace because I wasn't strong enough in myself to just completely walk away and cut things off. I tried it and I kept failing. But so yeah, that's just kind of how things ended. And I think he might have tried to message me a couple times after that, but he just stopped the pursuit. So I'm assuming maybe he found another victim, another person to kind of drain, but I just got tired, and I was just like, you know what? I have something to live for. Like this is not what I want my life to look like anymore. So that's really what it was.
So, although you all had this distance between each other, emotionally you were still attached. What
Mhm.
boundaries did you have to put in place for yourself
Mm.
to move forward?
Um, that's a good question. I had to I had to seek out a lot of healing for myself. Like I had to eventually start to get therapy. I had to um kind of learn about that type of relationship, like what goes on, how does it start. I had to kind of educate myself so that if they did try to come back, I wouldn't be so quick to jump back into it. Because again, I was just at the point where it's like, I'm never doing this again. So I had to kind of build up a mental fort within myself so I could have resolve. So that included therapy, that included like following other coaches who talk about relationships. It included educating myself because I didn't know anything about narcissistic abuse at the time. My therapist was the one who kind of brought it up and explained it, and she was like, yeah, this is what was happening and this is what you're dealing with. And I was like, whoa. I didn't know anything about it, and I'm like, this thing really happens? Like, it's really people out here who will target you and just latch on and drain the life out of you? And it's like, no, it's a very real thing. I don't think it's as common as a lot of people make it, but it does happen. And it can happen to literally anyone. You just need the right combination of factors at the right time. And so, yeah, I just had to rebuild piece by piece. I spent a lot of time alone, somewhat in isolation, because I had to get myself together. After going through something like that, you are dealing with so much mentally. So it was a lot, and it's taken years. I'm still not completely healed because it's going to take years. But yeah, I had to be very intentional. It was just like this or nothing, do or die, essentially.
So, how long has it been since you walked away from that situation?
Yeah. So the last time I talked to them was probably like November of 2021. It was the end of that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. And the reason why I asked that because I was doing a little research and it said for a breakup, it can take up to 2 years to recover, sometimes longer, depending on the circumstances of that relationship. So it can take quite some time. Um,
Yeah.
in therapy, I'm sorry, I just noticed something flashing on my TV, and I don't know why it's flashing
Oh no.
because it normally doesn't. That's weird. But what was my question? You mentioned therapy. You had to seek out therapy and other relationship coaches. Can you tell me what did you learn about yourself during that process?
Yeah. So basically the first thing I took from that when I finally got alone with my thoughts and started to process everything was a lot of my trauma from childhood and from my past was showing up in that relationship, things that I hadn't dealt with. For example, um, father wounds that I had from childhood, my parents divorcing, I was struggling with like low self image. So it was just a lot of insecurities and trauma that I hadn't dealt with. And I feel like that was kind of the open door for that relationship to form.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Because I had a situation. I wouldn't necessarily, if I had to say, I'm not one to use the term narcissistic loosely.
Mhm.
But if I had to say, if I had my encounter with some men, I would say there are two men in particular that definitely have narcissistic tendencies
Mhm.
strong because I believe that we all have to a certain extent some kind of narcissistic tendencies, but they were
For
very
sure.
strong. They were
Yeah.
very strong, and that's usually how it happens for me being involved with that guy. I had gone through cancer, and then after cancer, it's like going through cancer caused a drift between me and my family eventually. And so it's like I was in a season where okay, I'm recovering, I'm still fighting for my health, but there's this drift. And how subtle it happened, we started communicating via Instagram in the DMs, and it just started off just casual, sending reels and so forth. And then eventually we would expound on the reels and have conversations. And then from there, eventually, and it took a long time because this started in 2020. And well, actually, the first message was sent in 2018, but talking consistently on a regular basis, it was 2020 until 2022. 2022, we finally met up. And in that time period, from 2022, when I met him, he was feeling that void of loneliness and community because really, essentially, he wasn't doing anything. He was just allowing me. He made me feel like I was heard because, again, I'm kind of a little. I wouldn't say estranged from my family, but there's some separation, some distance there, and so he was feeling that void of me feeling heard, because that's something that I've learned too about myself. I dealt with father wounds because my dad was not only physically absent, he was emotionally absent as well. He was in the military, but as an adult, I reached out trying to reconcile a relationship, and he was still emotionally absent and just withdrawn. And so what I've learned is subconsciously we tend to attract those men that whatever was missing in our childhood, we tend to attract those type of men because subconsciously we're trying to get that unmet need fulfilled by this person. And so that's how I ended up in that situation, because one of my other wounds is not feeling seen and heard. I always felt like I grew up, I'm the eldest daughter, and I felt like the only time there was some attention given was when there was a dire need. But for the most part, I was very self-sufficient. I was hyper independent. Even with cancer, the situation with cancer, it's like everybody rushed in. It's almost kind of like a funeral. When you hear up into it, well, when you hear about I don't know if you can say that word, but from the passing to the funeral, everybody is there, and then after the funeral, it's like everybody disappeared, and it's like, but fighting cancer is kind of pretty much a lifelong journey. Really for all of us, whether you're on the preventative side, being proactive, whatever, it's still kind of a lifelong journey. But it's like from that initial news until my mastectomy, family were there, and then after that, it's kind of like they kind of like disappeared. And so what it did to me is it reinforced that I'm not important unless there's a dire need. And so I say all that to say that this guy made me feel important. He made me feel heard. He made me feel.
It's so weird because they'll make you feel like you're the center of their universe, and it kind of feels nice at first, but then it becomes a little twisted because it's like, wait a minute, you don't have anything else going on? Like, you don't want someone to make you everything, because then on the flip side of that, it's like obsession, it's like control, it's not healthy at all. But if you're not used to seeing the healthy version of it, then you can kind of think, oh, well, this is what it's supposed to be,
Right.
But as far as like the family wounds, I can definitely relate. I have had instances where I felt like, my dad or my family would show up when I was really going through something. But then for the smaller parts of my life, I felt like, oh, it doesn't really matter. So I definitely can relate on that aspect for sure.
Right. And then how it shows up in the relationship, because actually the small moments matter more so than the big moments, but how it shows over and goes transfers over into the relationship, we start to abandon ourselves. We start to abandon our needs because it's like, oh, well, it really doesn't matter. It's not really a big deal. And so we don't have this requirement. We don't have this standard for our needs to be met because they have been overlooked for so long.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't mind sharing, once you learn those things about yourself, can you share some ways that you've learned to work through some of those wounds, or if you're still working through them, how are you
Yeah.
working through those?
I mean, I do feel like it's a lifelong journey to become whole, regardless of what you've been through in life. But once you become aware, you can make better decisions, right? So, again, just going to therapy, I highly recommend. Um, Surrounding yourself with people who either have insight on relationships or they're healthy or they're in a healthy relationship, it can kind of give you the contrast to know like what to look for, what you should accept and things like that. Um, yeah, so my growth and my healing is just it's a constant journey. And one thing I personally like to do, I love to journal. I love to write down my thoughts and just sit with myself because sometimes I think we just need to slow down and understand what's going on internally. Like I
Right.
used to just make decisions haphazardly, not knowing where they were coming from. And so now I'm a lot more intentional about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I will take time with myself to process things because I want to know, okay, is this coming from a solid place, or am I just doing this because I feel desperate or because I'm lonely or that kind of thing. So just like that self-awareness, it is a life changer. It's a game changer. And then of course, I'm a believer, so I believe that, prayer, reading the Bible, it can fill you in ways that nothing else really can. And I
Right.
feel like if you can't become whole and content and have some kind of fulfillment in yourself between you and God, then nothing else is going to fill that void. And you can have everything that you thought you wanted, and it's gonna be meaningless.
Right, and then once you get a taste of God, you gonna thank God that it didn't happen, right?
Yes,
But I love that
absolutely.
for you that you are very intentional in questioning your thoughts, your motives behind things, and being very self-attuned because a lot of people we we're operating on autopilot, and so our subconscious mind is running the show,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times we're not even aware of why we are doing certain things, why we believe what we believe, why
Mm-hmm.
we think what we think, um why do we act and behave the way that we behave, why we have this, why we feel so strongly about things when it comes to our emotions. So a lot of people don't really take the time to self-reflect and ask themselves this question. So I really love that you are very self-attuned. And one thing that I've learned, a journal will be a mirror to you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I remember during that season when I was in that situationship and I was journaling, and then maybe month or so or getting out of that situation, I went back and I read what I had written down. I was like, girl, you was losing
Mm-hmm.
it. So it's
Yeah.
like,
It's a little
so
scary.
another thing that I like to do too, I had began doing during that season is I would record myself. I would talk to myself on camera, and
Yeah.
then once you replay that back and you listen to yourself, you start to question like, this doesn't sound like a sound person.
Mm-hmm.
So it started to really get you to dive deeper and to really look in self and like, hold on, there are some things that I need to work on because
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So we kind of touched on how has your mindset changed since this? You have the awareness. So how has your mindset changed as far as dating?
As far as dating, okay. So I used to really believe that I needed a relationship to make me happy, to make me feel whole, to make me like have a strong sense of self-worth and accomplishment. Like I felt like that was what was missing from my life. And since I've been on this kind of healing journey, seeking God, seeking purpose, I realized that that wasn't the missing piece. I just needed to have an awareness, more of an awareness of who I am, like identity. And of course, I find that in Christ. And I also need to have contentment. Like, I need to build a life for myself that I enjoy, that I'm content with, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know why, as a young Christian woman, I just felt like me and a lot of other people, there's an obsession with getting married and having kids young. And I don't think it's anything wrong with that at all. Like, especially if you're in a position to do that or that happens for you and it works. But I think a lot of it is we are just taught that that's going to make me happy. That's going to solve all of my problems. And it doesn't. Like, you can have that and still be miserable, you know, and still be dealing with trauma and, you know, whatever it is. So my mindset is more so, I want, if I do end up in a marriage or relationship, I want it to be a reflection of my own life, like the work I've done on myself, the life that I've built for myself, my purpose. I'm not trying to make a person my God, essentially, like the center of my life. And a lot of people, I don't think they realize, with narcissistic abuse, this is my personal opinion based on experience. I think the victim is somewhere in there where they're idolizing the narcissist. They're like making them their God in a way. Because how do you allow someone to control your life, your temperament, your environment? Like, you know, only God should be in that place.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you have to want something to change in your life to get different results. And that relationship was the catalyst for change for me, because I had been dealing with certain things for years. Like, that wasn't the first thing I've been through. I've been through a lot in life, but that was kind of like the straw that like really made me start to face myself and deal with my trauma and change the things that I didn't like in my life. And nobody's going to come in my life and do that for me. I had to do it for myself.
Right. But those relationships would definitely reveal to us the areas that we need to heal, because, like you said, it gets to a point where, you know, you begin to idolize the relationship. And I think that a lot of, I think that's what happened. That is what happened, is common in the Christian community, because we wrap it up in spiritual bypassing, but I really think that it's kind of borderline idolatry, in my opinion.
Yes.
And, you know, I had a breastie. You know how you say bestie, but she's my breast cancer sister, so we say breastie. Before when I was still single and I was leaving that situationship, she told me, you need to be as whole as possible before marriage. And so that's what I would tell women, because yes, healing is a lifelong journey, but before you say I do, I highly recommend that you get to know who you are in Christ, and you learn the nature of God, and you know, you define love in God, like his definition, his standard of love, because it would give you the blueprint, the standard of what to look for, how to vet this person. Because I always refer to 1 Corinthians 13:4-8. It says, love is patient, love is kind. It's not easily angered, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast. And so when I'm looking at this person, I'm okay, are you patient? Are you kind?
Yeah.
Are you easily angered or not? Or do you keep record of wrongdoing? So I look at those, and do you possess the fruits of the spirit? Like, so I look at, because you mentioned how we as women, we have this desire. It's almost kind of like a infatuation or illusion of just, really, it's nothing wrong with desiring marriage, but it needs to come from a a place of wholeness, not
Exactly.
desperation, right? And so I think that we have been sold this watered down Disney version of what marriage is supposed to look like, what love is supposed to look like. And
Hmm.
I'm gonna be honest, and I probably get some pushback, but I was telling my husband the other day, I really don't even like the ideal of women showing off their proposal or their ring on social media nowadays, because it's kind of like, because every time you see a proposal, the woman is always in the camera like, oh, let me see the ring, let me see the ring. And it's like this. It's like, and she's like this. And it's like, okay, finally we got this ring. We prioritize getting this ring, but are
Hmm.
you really prepared for marriage?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot
And
of women, they're after that very thing, the status, the showing off, the ring, the wedding. And it's like, okay, what comes after that though? I mean, it's giving people the wrong impression. Well, young women, I would say the wrong impression. Like, because you know more than anybody, I'm not married, but I'm sure that marriage is a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, and you have to be prepared or you're preparing to fail. So, yeah, I think the focus is totally off. And unfortunately, culture, social media perpetuates it. Like, um, it was something you said that I wanted to kind of highlight. I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, that the whole social media culture thing, I think it's very deceiving. Like somebody was telling me the other day, you see couples posting pictures and videos, and 5 minutes before they posted, they was fighting. Like, and I'm not saying that's the truth for everybody,
right,
but you just see it happen a lot more because I think there's a study that says people who are really happy in their relationship, they tend to post a little bit less.
right.
I've
And
heard
I'm not
that.
saying anything is wrong. I don't personally. On my personal page, I really hardly ever post. So I cut most of my social media. Like I don't have social media, but I only have my Instagram left, my personal Instagram. But on there, I really don't have anything, and I really don't post my family, my kids. I don't post my husband, anything like that, because as a believer, we have to be mindful. The Bible tells us not to covet. And
Mhm.
when you're posting your lifestyle, on social media, you are inviting people to covet your marriage, your family, your lifestyle. And
Yes.
I don't want to attract that type of energy into,
Hmm.
because everybody is not really pleased for you. They're not happy for
They're
you.
not.
And
Yeah.
that can eventually play on your subconscious. You start to seek that validation. And so,
Hmm.
you have to really be emotionally mature about marriage. And that's another thing. Well, two things. As far as being content, now that I'm married, and don't take this the wrong way, because if I had to choose a side, okay, there are pros and cons to singleness and marriage.
Hmm.
But what I want single women to understand, that singleness is a gift just as well as marriage.
Hmm.
And there are pros and
Yep.
cons to both. And if you are a single woman, there's nothing wrong with desiring marriage. Just spend more of your single season stewarding that well
Hmm.
and being content, because I tell people all the time that, you know, I wish I would have spent more of my single season being content than not. Now, I did reach a place of contentment in my single season,
Hmm.
but after I did the inner work, my husband showed up in no time. And
Yeah.
so I really didn't have a whole lot of time enjoying my single season. And now, like I
Mm.
said, I have no regrets, but, well, it's not a regret. I just wish I would have spent more time, because I spent all of my 20s, half of my 30s having this unhealthy desire for marriage,
Hmm.
instead of actually stewarding my single season well, like you said, building a life that I actually enjoyed. It wasn't until maybe like 35 that I really just started, and I'm 40 now, but that I began to enjoy my life. Like I started to travel long.
Wow.
and just do things, go out, take myself out. Sometimes I was just dressed up in the house, not going anywhere,
Yeah.
and just doing things for me. I got into fitness. I spent a lot of time in solitude, and I learned to be content in my own company and
Mm-hmm.
just listen to my thoughts and be okay with that, because a lot of people like to run away from themselves. They don't, it
Mm-hmm.
is uncomfortable because those thoughts can become very intrusive at some point.
Yeah, they can if you let them, for sure.
And I think, you just need a healthy balance. Like, because yes, we need community, but you also, and I say this, you learn about yourself alone and in community. And so
Mm-hmm.
you need both, but it needs to
Yes.
be a healthy balance.
For
So,
sure. And that's really, that is so crazy you said that at age 35 was when you started to feel content, because I'm 35 now and I'm just now starting to feel content with myself and my life. I feel like things are going how they're supposed to go, and I'm just genuinely happy. Like, is everything perfect? No.
right.
But I actually feel like my singleness is a gift, and I don't necessarily want to change it tomorrow. Like, if something happens, cool, but I'm just like, wow, I'm actually really enjoying this. And I was missing out on this when I was younger. So I don't know if it's something about being 35, but like in my 20s, child, I was just running around with like a chicken with my head cut off. So,
Let me see. I want to ask one. Well, I have a few more questions, but I do want to ask this question. Um, since then, how has you mentioned being whole in Christ and having a relationship with Christ? How has that relationship changed since um leaving that relationship?
whew, oh my goodness. It's like night and day. It changed drastically. And when I say drastically, it's like almost immediately when I got out that relationship. First of all, I was seeking God like never before because I really, really needed him. Like, I need him all the time, but I was so aware of my need for him at that time. And so I was really seeking him. I was fasting, I was praying, I was seeking godly counsel. And I was just spending a lot of time by myself, just, trying to figure things out. So, in that time when I was spending time with God and just meditating, I started to hear God's voice so clearly, like clear as day, to whereas before I would, get little drops of something here and there. But I feel like, first of all, I wasn't really positioned trying to hear him, and I didn't really know what I didn't know. Like, I grew up in church, so I thought I was close to God when I was in the relationship. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was following God, and I wasn't. But when I got out of that, it's almost like the floodgates open, and I just got so close to God. So he just started revealing things to me about purpose, about my identity, about just his plans for my life. And even though it was a really dark period because I was dealing with so much loss and financial loss, relationship loss, just so many things at one time, I was genuinely like content. Like, I had a joy because I felt like I was finally getting that relationship with God that I always wanted. You know what I mean? Like, when I pray, I would get a response. I was seeing things change in my life. And so it's just so weird. Like, sometimes when you're in the lowest place is when you're in the best place. And I was the closest to God. So, and then, like, he started showing me a lot about my gifts. I started just recording videos because I felt like I had something to say. And I always felt like I wanted to help women, but I just didn't think it would look like this. I didn't think it would come out of my deepest place of pain and hurt. And so that was the time where a lot of the stuff I'm doing now, that's where that seed was planted, in that dark place.
Right.
Hmm.
And so it made me think about two things when you mentioned that in a low place. It made me think about being in a valley, or being that seed being planted in some soil. um, oftentimes that's where we grow. That's where the growing, the transformation takes place in the valley.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned how you had to go through that pain. Now you gain the wisdom from it, and now you are helping pouring into other women. And so it always made me think about Romans 8:28. For those who love the Lord according to His will or purpose. I'm probably butchering the scripture, but basically everything happens for your good and His glory. And it's something about how He is developing us. He's always transforming us, and that's what we need for things to happen for our good, even if it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that for our good. What would you tell someone to do for the women who are maybe have been in a bad relationship and was able to break free of that relationship but still desires marriage? What would you suggest to prepare for marriage? What would you tell a young woman what the things she needs to do before she say I do?
Great question. So I'm actually still in a season of preparation myself because I have not walked into the season of marriage or covenant or anything like that. But I always tell women to prepare first because that's the only way you're going to get a different result. So to me, preparation looks like working on the things that I don't like about myself. Like I said, creating a life that I enjoy, focusing on healing trauma, and just looking at every aspect of my life. Because sometimes, like we talked about spiritual bypassing, right? That's important. That's like the foundation, but that's not the only area we need to work on. For some of us, it's our health and our fitness. For some of us, it's working on better in our relationships and our relationship skills, learning how to deal with conflict, all kinds of things. So when I say creating a life, I mean holistically just bettering ourselves, because when you come in a partnership with somebody, it's a partnership, and you should be able to bring something into that that's going to be beneficial to the other person. You don't want to be going into a relationship as a burden emotionally because you have not dealt with any trauma. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect because no one is perfect, but you should at least start working on certain things, because just think about what you want when it comes to a relationship. You want to focus on becoming what you want so you can attract that. And so even though I'm not in a committed relationship or marriage, I have a better idea of what I want, and I'm focused on becoming what I want, and I'm attracting better than much better than I have in the past. So it's like I'm not there, but I'm seeing a lot of progress.
I'm glad that you said that and shed some light on that, because I always tell women, a few things. Now, a lot of people don't like Kevin Samuels, but he tells the truth. He tells the truth about a lot of things. Now, some things I don't disagree with because I'm like, nah, I wouldn't do that. But one thing that he said is you can never demand more than what you are.
Exactly. Facts.
And so when we're talking about preparation for a relationship or marriage, you have to, like you said, you have to become the thing or become the person that you want to attract. Because how can you demand more if you're lacking in this area? You're not saying that this person has to be completely your equal, but there needs to be value on both sides. And one thing is like, if we really look at ourselves, because that person is going to mirror you. And so if you really had to just be vulnerable and look in a mirror, literally and figuratively, would you be happy with what you see? Would you be pleased? And so think, like you said, the things that you don't like about yourself, those are the things that you need to work on before you attract, because And I will say too, I like to tell women, that's where I was going to go with women. I tell them, because we like to shift the blame on men. We don't like to, oftentimes it's hard for us to have that awareness and accountability. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, when I say this, I'm sharing this for your good. Like God always tell, it's for your good. Wisdom is for your protection, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you definitely attract a better pool of men once you begin to do the inner work. Because
Absolutely.
now it's like that energy, you just don't attract that. You're not interested in it. It's like, I don't even like that food anymore. It's kind of like fitness. I got heavily into fitness, and when and changing my diet, my nutrition. And so when I was in the beginning season of my life, I mean beginning in the beginning of that season of my life, it's like the things that I used to eat, I can no longer eat those foods anymore. It's like it
Your
disgusts
taste
me.
when everything changes,
Right.
right?
Right. So, when you change, everything else changes. Right.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
if you
for
want to get the
sure.
results that you're looking for, and I want to go back too, and I'm gonna let you go. I'm not sure how much time we're kind of
Oh,
a little
I
bit over now.
I want to stop real quick because a few minutes ago I had something that said we got 5 minutes left. I don't know if you got that same message, but on my end it said it's going to end in 5 minutes. So if it drops off for some reason, then I guess you could just start it up again and I'll hop on. But I just want to put that out there because I don't know what's going to happen.
It did just ask me over an hour, asked you to do like a little puzzle. I had to do a puzzle. It told you actually,
Oh, okay. So it extends after the puzzle. Is
yeah,
that
I believe so. Did you
okay?
have to do a
Okay. I
puzzle?
would, huh?
Did you have to do a puzzle?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, and you did it.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
All
All
right.
right. When it comes to spiritual bypassing, right? Yes, that is true. Because when we talk about preparation for marriage, yes, you should possess the fruits of the spirit. You should embody the fruits of the spirit. You should be patient. You should be kind. You should be forgiving. You should be understanding.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's where again, but before that, you need to know your identity in Christ, and you need to become those things before you get married. Because, like I said, your partner, your spouse, they're only going to be a mirror of you. And so,
Mm-hmm.
having that foundation, that communication skills, because I think we take the text out of we what I'm trying to say, we take it out of context, because it's like, no, that's not a pass to just accept foolishness,
Right.
right? But these are the things that we should be doing in the preparation stage, not once we already married, but in
Mm-hmm.
the preparation stage to vet this person to see, are they patient, they kind, how do they deal with anger, conflict, communication style, do they stonewall, contempt, anything like that. These are the things that we need to be looking for doing the dating, like, or the courting stage or whatever. These are the things that we need to be looking for, and we need to also have a level of emotional maturity and
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence to be able to recognize these things. And I can't stress enough, know the word. It will guide you.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. Like, don't be dependent on anyone else to know the word for you because that was another trap in that relationship. They presented as someone, I'm a man of God, I'm called to preach, I'm all of this stuff, right? And they were just constantly twisting the Bible to get what they wanted, like throughout the whole relationship. So you have to know this world in itself is crazy enough. When you talking about getting relationships, you have to know for yourself. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Right. And when it comes to knowing the word for yourself, so you never been married, right?
No, I
Okay.
haven't been
Because
married. No.
see, here's another thing, and we can discuss more. I can provide scripture, but a lot of we have been taught wrong about adultery,
Mm,
and so we were never meant to be having two, three, four spouses.
I
And
believe
so
that.
you mentioned that he was previously married, so biblically, in God's eyes, that marriage wouldn't have been recognized anyway if you all had said I do, because biblically he's still
He's still tied to that person.
Yeah, he's still bound to his first living spouse. If she's
Yeah.
still living, now, in the Bible it tells us, yes, if you choose to get a divorce, hey, I recommend that you reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose to get a divorce, you must remain untouched, meaning single, and untouched, meaning no
Other stuff.
right, which is how we should be conducting our lives anyway, living our lives if we are single anyway.
Yeah.
Or to reconcile with your spouse. That's it. Those are your only two options. So it's like, I really have to. The relationship industry is oversaturated, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I am right. And we really have to be careful of where we are getting our relationship advice from, because it could
My
be
goodness.
detrimental to our soul.
Mm-hmm.
Because we could be potentially sending our soul to a place we don't want to go, because we end up, tying our soul with someone, and then or getting in an adulterous marriage, because according to the Bible, it's plain and clear. Scripture is plain and clear, and a lot of people, and because what I've read too, there are no biblical, from my research, my study, there are no biblical grounds for divorce. It says in Matthew 19:9 or something, about, it says itself. Now, most versions say it's sexual immorality, but in the King James Version, it says fornication. And then after doing more research, well, fornication, that's just between two single people. But in that time, they recognized the engagement as if you were already married, but you wouldn't. But if you have not yet consummated your marriage, then and one stepped out of that union, then you can put her away. And so a lot of people don't know that, because they'll always say, well, adultery or infidelity is grounds for divorce. No, it's not. But it's a covenant. And can we stop with this narrative that marriage is a contract? No, it's not. It's a covenant.
It's deep. Like, oh my goodness.
Not a contract.
Yeah.
Because there are loopholes in contracts. You can get out of a contract. You cannot get out of a covenant. So, know yourself. Know who you are marrying. Know what it is that you want, what you desire. It's so many things that I would tell to add to what you were saying, in building a life, that you want. You got to consider, okay, do I want kids? How many kids? How do we want to raise them? What the responsibility of discipline, how's that going to look? Household chores, responsibilities, careers, if you want to live in the city, if you want to live off grid. Like, there are so many things to consider when you are meshing your life with someone, right? That we don't think about. And so it's like, we think that, we just want to be with this person, we love this person, which I use that term loosely too, because love, I go by God's definition of love. And so when I read God's definition of love, it says nothing about it. It doesn't even acknowledge your feelings.
Yeah.
So
it's that's deep, because it's like, love is what? Action, dying to self. Yeah, that's definitely not what we hear in love culture in our society. So
it's, I want to be happy.
Yeah, it's all about me. And child, like you said, that stuff will send you straight somewhere you don't want to go. And I'm not judging. I'm not perfect. I still struggle with some of that, but I have the blueprint and I have something to work towards. Like, okay, this is the standard. And I know if something doesn't fall in line with that, something is off. So,
right. And it's okay to have, of course, you're going to have that type of feeling, that romantic love. There's nothing wrong with romance, but that alone is not going to sustain the foundation of a, right. And so sometimes we really just have to look at the bigger picture, right? Because feelings are fleeting. There's nothing wrong with having those little cute little.
Butterflies.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but have it for the right person,
Yeah.
and because it was something you said that I was gonna piggyback on. Um, when we was talking about, I don't know it. I
It'll
forgot.
come back later, probably.
um, Let me see. Oh, so I wanted to ask this question because I want to kind of like chime in on this one too.
Okay.
What is one dating myth Christians believe?
Mm. I personally think that a lot of Christians believe if you find the person, the one that God ordained for you, that it's like it's not gonna be hard. It's gonna look a certain way. It's be easy and it's gonna always flow and it's gonna be butterflies and rainbows because this is your person. But I disagree with that. I think that if God sent someone into your life, they're going to challenge you. They're going to push you closer to God. Like you're going to have to be more dependent on Him in that relationship. You're going to have to grow. And I think that's definitely going to be a lot of joy, but I think it's going to be like a place where you have to grow. And so I think there's a misconception of because of what we see in movies, like you said, the feelings, the lust, the limerence. I think there's a huge misconception on what it means to have a God ordained person in your life.
I definitely agree, right? Because it's a saying, marriage is not supposed to make you happy, it's supposed to make you holy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at God and the model and what the definition of God is to become more like Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Like we literally have to I don't know if you can say that other word, but deny ourselves and really and learn how to master ourselves in a sense of like emotional regulation, patience, forgiveness, things like that. And so it's the when we look at the definition again, it's to make you more like Christ. And you think about it, God is the creator of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's to make you more like Him in His image.
Mm-hmm.
Really for single and married, but I think that is a little bit more magnified in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
To be that model. Now, one myth that I believe Christians believe is this whole notion of being equally yoked. And when I say being equally yoked, meaning that, like you mentioned earlier, how he's a good guy, this and that or whatever, and so or he's a man of God, and so as long as we are both believers, we have the same faith, that's enough to sustain a relationship or marriage, and it's not.
Mm.
It's not, because again, we have to go back to the compatibility part.
Mm-hmm.
Are we compatible? Just because we believe the same, are we compatible in our lifestyles, in our vision, our purpose, our goals?
Yeah.
And when it comes to, that's another myth, I believe, when they say God ordained. This is my personal opinion and from my research.
Mm-hmm.
God gives us free will and we can get to choose who we want to marry.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you say, I do,
that's it.
Every marriage is ordained by God.
Mm-hmm.
If it's done in His way, where it's a first-time marriage for both parties, that marriage is ordained by God. If it wasn't the case, then He wouldn't even gave us instructions for the unbelieving spouse.
Yeah.
And so all marriages are ordained. So it's like I think that we have been sold again this fairy tale that we have this I can't say specific, but this specific person that God has for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that loosely because you still have free will.
Yeah.
You still have free will to choose who you want to choose, but that goes back to wholeness. It's a person out there for you, but they're going to mirror who you are, wherever you are in your life.
Mm-hmm.
that's what they're going to reflect back to you.
So I got a question. I'm glad you brought this up. You were talking about the verse about the unbelieving spouse.
Hmm.
Do you think that it is a sin for a Christian to marry someone who is not a believer or who is not where they are spiritually?
I can't say whether it's a sin or not. I do know the Bible speaks about how we are not to be unequally yoked
Mm-hmm.
and to be with unbelievers. But if we do choose to make that decision, then we are supposed to model Christ, and we're supposed to do all the things that we would do in a both Christian two, well, not where both parties are Christians.
Yeah.
And so because through your patience, through your good deeds, through your prayer, they may come over to Christ too. They may see Christ.
Yeah.
So I can't say necessarily whether it's a sin or not, but I do know that the Bible reference speaks about how we are not to be unequally yoked.
Yeah.
But that goes back to, again, knowing the word for yourself and being as whole as possible before you even say I do. Because I believe that, again, if we follow the blueprint, and then in addition to following the blueprint, if we learn how to apply biblical principles practically,
Mm-hmm.
then it'll better it'll set us up for better success in marriage. Like
Yeah.
learning the communication, forgiveness, and understanding, and so forth.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. It sounds like a lot of wisdom needs to be applied in this process. And I think you have brought up like your what's like a favorite scripture or something like that. And my favorite scripture coming out of that was Proverbs 4:7. Like above all else, get knowledge. Like get wisdom, get information, discernment, all of that. You need all of it. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we can. Do you have any other questions? Because I can talk. Because this was good.
It was good. I was a little nervous because I've never like shared my full story and I still haven't shared the full thing, but starting out this was a really good experience. So,
Well, I really appreciate you for taking the time to be vulnerable, transparent, and share your story with us, and in hopes that it brings more awareness and help another woman.
mhm.
Um, for those that are in a narcissistic relationship, and they may need help getting out of that or coached out of that. I know you say that you don't do relationship coaching, but you do help women survivors of narcissistic abuse rebuild
Yeah.
their lives, and you
I
coach them
guess
in that
some
area.
aspect of it is relationship. I just don't necessarily focus on the dating process. Like my
Right.
focus is on healing the relationship with self, moving past prior relationships and that type of thing. But yeah.
Okay. So how can you be contacted if anyone wants to work with you?
Sure. So you can send me an email, BLeiaM. So that's BLeiaHM at
Um,
gmail.com. Also, all my social media platforms are at Brianna L. Moore. So either way is fine. Just shoot me a message and we can go from there.
okay. All right. Any closing questions?
I don't
Or
think I have.
statements?
Yeah, so I don't I could really talk about this forever, but I don't think I have any questions. Just big ups to you and creating this platform for us to have this conversation because I feel like it's very needed and it's very fulfilling for me to even sit and talk about this stuff. So thank you for giving us this platform. I really enjoyed this conversation.
No problem. You're welcome. Thank you. So final statements is that healing is possible, but that begins with awareness, and awareness changes everything. And once you have the awareness, you can begin to change your beliefs, your thoughts, your actions, your patterns. once you have that awareness, and you do that through repetition, doing it over and over and over again. So every time that negative thought, you have this belief about something, sit with yourself, question that, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Like, is this really the issue? Am I really mad at this person? Or is this something that happened in my childhood 30 years ago? And challenge that thought and ask yourself, is it true? Is this thought true? What proof, what evidence do I have of that? And the more that you begin to practice that and be aware, the easier it will become, and you'll begin to see the changes that you need to see, and you'll raise your standards, because your expectations now, because once you change your belief system, that's that mindset. In school they told us mind is a terrible thing to waste. Baby, that mindset is the root to a lot of our issues.
It really is.
Our belief system.
Yeah.
So once we change our beliefs, we can begin to think differently about love and relationships and who we are, how we see ourselves, which will ultimately change the standards that we have for ourselves, the boundaries, the non-negotiables, so we won't be compromised in relationships where we're tempted to compromise on what our values, our standards are. When we meet someone, because you may have a church member say, oh, he's a good guy, this and that, or give him a chance. No. I am secure within myself, and I'm not negotiating on my standards, my boundaries. If it's not measuring up to what now, of course, healthy compromise is reasonable, but that's kind of like on food or something like that. And I don't even like to compromise on my food. I won't. I like to savor my food, so my husband, like, listen, I don't really like to compromise on my food.
Yes, what's mine is mine.
So, but yeah, it's like I said, it's a balance. You got to know what is a healthy compromise, what is an unhealthy compromise. But if it causes you to stray away from yourself, if it causes you to abandon yourself, then that may not be it. Yes. Yeah. And I always say, if I'm saying yes to you, if I have to say yes to you, but it's a no to me in a way that I am abandoning self and I'm depleting self, then this may not be the best situation, or you may not be the best person for me. Because like you mentioned, he was very dismissive of your desires and your goals, and that was a lack of consideration.
Yeah. And that was just the beginning. That was just the tip of the iceberg. But on a serious note, I just want to say, always listen to that inner voice. Like, I would rather you be a little on the not suspicious, but I would rather you be a little more on the cautious side and be wrong than to not listen and be right. Because this is not a game. Like, this is not something to play around with. This world is crazy. And I know a lot of stories of people who didn't listen and it cost them everything. So
it's going to cost. And I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap it up.
Yeah,
but that's another thing that I like to tell women, like, it really saddens me sometimes that we don't see the need to invest in our spiritual, in our personal development, and in our relationships. Yes, we're all here to be in a relationship with one another, and some on a romantic level, and we desire that. We're all hardwired for love, but we don't see the need to invest into our relationships. But I say it's either you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later.
Yeah,
because it's like that word in Texas. I don't know if I can say that word, but you know how they say it's like the D word in Texas. Is no escaping that, right? Yeah. And so you're gonna pay now, and you invest in. But the thing is, when you pay now, the investment is so much greater than waiting later to pay, and it's gonna cost you twice.
Yeah. It
It's
is.
gonna
Whatever
cost
you don't
you.
deal with, it deal with you.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that being said, ladies, prepare now while you're still, if you desire to be married, prepare now while you're still single. Don't just prepare for the wedding. Don't just prepare for the ring. Prepare for a lifelong commitment, covenant with your future spouse.
Amen. Let the church say amen.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you. We can
Likewise.
do this again if you like, or if you want to interview me. Yeah,
Okay.
I
That
like
would be
this.
cool. I would love that. Yeah.
All
So
right.
I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, okay? Or well,
You as
weekend.
well.
All right.
You as well.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.